everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing another album review. I'm going to be taking a look today at the debut album by The Smiths. So I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So as I said, this was the band's debut album released on the 20th of February in 1984. Now by this point the Smiths had already released 2 singles, as were Hand in Glove followed by This Charming Man, and throughout 1983 they were kind of thinking about and kind of in the process of making their debut album. Now, recording it was not a smooth process by any means. Originally, they got in producer Troy Tate, who was formerly the guitarist with the band The Teardrop Explodes. And these recordings were done kind of with the aim of capturing the band's live sound faithfully. However, these sessions did not run smoothly, as the corresponding recordings were out of tune, and by later on, in 1983, around October sort of time, Morrissey and Moore wanted to do something slightly different, something a little bit more polished, as their kind of introduction to the world, as an album. So these Troy Tate recordings, they kind of tried, I think, to sort of fix them up, but in the end, they were eventually just completely discarded and re-recorded with producer John Porter, who they met through a live BBC session which they were doing around this time. Now Porter would become a very integral part of the Smiths' story. He produced many of their hit singles right throughout their career, and was a real kind of mentor and almost teacher for the young Johnny Marr, with regards to recording techniques and the kind of the layering and just the whole process of making a record. So yeah, as I said, they worked with John Porter to essentially just completely re-record the album. Now this was done very kind of quickly and ad hoc kind of methods, between kind of touring commitments, and supposedly once this was finished, Morrissey wasn't very happy with this one either. However, Rough Trade, the label, sort of forced them to release it. They'd already spent enough money recording the album 2 times over. They could not afford to do it a third time. This album came out in the February. So upon its release, it was a commercial hit. It charted at number 2 in the UK national charts in its first week off release, which was it's the norm today for an album to kind of come sort of first week off release to get its peak chart position. But really back in 70s and 80s, that was much more of a rarity, and albums would tend to build up sales and a mass interest over time. So it just really shows the level of anticipation that there was for this album. As I said, they'd already had the first the first top 30 single with This Charming Man, so obviously that created a lot of anticipation for the album, and it was also met with critical acclaim. Even though now I think it is widely considered as maybe the Smiths' weakest album, maybe tied with Meat Is Murder, I'm not too sure, but tends to be this is never anyone's favourite Smiths album, or never considered their best. As I think many people kind of now consider that the choice of material on the album was maybe a little bit weak, because they had a lot of great B-sides out around this time as well, all of which weren't on this finished album. So I think that is kind of one criticism that is levelled at it. So I wish I'd show you my vinyl copy of it here. This is nothing special, it's just a reissue copy of it, but they've very faithfully done these Smiths reissues, so I've kept mine in the shrink wrap there, though. I guess if I ever do get a nice original, I guess I could always sell this one on. But then it's just got, there's nothing else inside there, there's no download code or anything, but you just get the pictures of the band there, so there they all are, and then the lyrics on the other side of the sleeve. And this is just on the usual kind of classic Smiths Rough Trade label there. Apologies about the light in there. So yeah, but that is the record label. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album's songs. So I'll score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. 15 minutes with you. So it kicks off with the song Reel Around the Fountain, which is a great album opener. It's quite a spaced out track, this, with I guess quite a repetitive structure, it sort of really just goes kind of verse, chorus, but it's a really beautiful song Lyrically, it is quite suggestive though, and sort of like a bit ambiguous as to what like it means. Some people have sort of like believed like at the time the song was about kind of paedophilia. However, I think that kind of like more generally it could be interpreted as kind of losing like your innocence and kind of growing up. He sings in it like it's time the tale were told of how you took a child and you made him old. And I think just about kind of like just kind of like that kind of like loss of innocence like as like one kind of grows up. But no, like this version like on like the album here is a really nice version of it. It features some nice piano and organ overdubs. Those are done by Paul Carrack, like these kind of overdubs kind of divide fans. A lot of people prefer the kind of slightly more rawer versions, which you get on like the BBC sessions or on Hatful of Hollow, or even like the Troy Tate versions, which have been like widely bootlegged. But no, like I think this is a great song. Originally, like this was actually earmarked as their second single, so the follow-up to Hand in Glove. I'm not quite sure how it would have fared like as a single because it's a very long. It's about a 6-minute track. This and like I think you would have definitely lost something like off the song like if you tried to do a kind of single edit like off it like or anything. And it's not a very commercial song, so I'm quite glad it wasn't released like as a single. But it is a great way to kick off the album there. So that would get a 9 out of 10 from me.
No, I've never had a job because I've never wanted one.
Next track up is called You've Got Everything Now, and this is a really good follow-up track. I like the way it kind of contrasts the kind of slow and I guess slightly kind of plodding nature of Reel Around the Fountain with this kind of upbeat kind of track. You've got the kind of guitars are very jaunty, very kind of piercing guitar parts on it. Lyrically, it's kind of about, I guess, comparing yourself with like other people who are kind of working, but are like work like in jobs, but I guess not happy like or like content like with like themselves. So he sings that like, no, I've never had a job because I've never wanted one. I've seen you smile, but I've never heard you laugh. So who is rich and who is poor, I cannot say. So I guess kind of in terms of its themes, a bit of a precursor to things like Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now or Frankly Mr. Shankly, but a really good song there though, and like a great like a kind of like a staple like in like their live sets like at like the time like as well. So yeah, for me, You've Got Everything Now would get a 10 out of 10. Next track up is called Miserable Lie, and this has never been a favourite track of mine personally. I think it's quite a messy song, I think, in terms of its structure. Starts off as a kind of slow tempo track, a little bit kind of dreary, but then kind of in the middle it just sort of explodes and it becomes a kind of very kind of punky song, very like energetic. But I just think that the two bits are really jarring and just don't really go together well. And especially then kind of towards the end of it, you then get these kind of very high sort of falsetto vocals like from Morrissey on it, which I just feel it goes on forever like towards like the end, and it is personally for me one of my least favourite Smith songs. So that one I think would actually get 4 out of 10. Like I'm not a big fan of it at all. Next track up is called Pretty Girls Make Graves, and this is quite a jaunty sounding song as you've got kind of slightly more like acoustic based instruments, so it's a nice kind of change like of texture like for like the album. And I guess, again, like a way kind of like lays a template for kind of future Smith songs, things like Girlfriend in a Coma or Frankly Mr. Shankly, kind of Johnny Moore using kind of different guitar sounds, and especially like the kind of middle section where like there's no sort of like there's no lyric, but you kind of just got Morrissey doing his thing, and then like kind of like this kind of I guess slightly mechanical kind of guitar sounding part. I think that's again quite like looks forward to kind of like future like Smith songs. Lyrically, it's a good track as well, kind of about kind of like the disappointment at kind of realising that you're, I guess, like unable to satisfy like a partner. Like he sings with it, like I'm not the man you think I am, and like by like the end, like of like the track, like the singer has lost my faith in womanhood. So yeah, no, a really nice song, and like again, an underrated album track that I would say.
To play tricks on your sacred mind.
Okay, and then side 1 closes off with The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and this is a alright song for me. I would say sound-wise, it's a pleasant enough song. Very kind of, I guess, similar musically to like Reel Around the Fountain. Very kind of mid-tempo drum beat, and you've kind of got Mars kind of like arpeggio guitar part on it, and like that. Very much kind of sounds, I guess in a way a bit Smiths by Numbers, like a little bit. Very very kind of like, yeah, like just like their sound kind of thing, like captured like in like a song really. But for me, the track is it just lacks any kind of sort of structure to it. I think that the lyrics is much more. I believe these were a set of lyrics which Morrissey had written way before like the Smiths like were even formed. So it's almost more like a kind of piece of poetry, like a little bit, but without any sense of structure. It's a kind of stream of consciousness style, like to like the lyrics, but throughout the track just feels repetitive because it's not changing. It's just the same chord structure over like Morrissey's like lyrics. So like even though it is telling a story, it's just for me doesn't really like engage me like enough. Now this, like I said, would be one of like the first songs they would write together, sort of thing, like in like the sense that like bringing together Morrissey's lyric and like kind of like Mark kind of putting music to that. So I think like, yeah, it was a good early attempt like at a song, but thankfully they would like get much better like as like the years and months went on. Okay, now we're on to side 2 of the album. Now this next track isn't actually on my copy of the album, but it is on most reissues and most CDs, and I think it was on the album like in like America as well. It is the classic This Charming Man, which I've got the single for it here, which I'll just quickly show now. So yeah, mysteriously left off the album, but I mean the Smiths were always like sort of pioneers, like kind of like the non-album single, like in like many ways. So it does seem like odd to have excluded This Charming Man, but have included like Hand in Glove. But no, this is the classic song, and there's probably not much I can add to what's been said about the song like already. Lyrically, it was inspired by a 1972 film called Sleuth, which starred Michael Caine, and like kind of like lifted like the line like from like the film, like I think it was Caine maybe saying to like the other actor like calling him like a jumped up pantry boy who doesn't know his place. So kind of Morrissey was kind of lifting these kind of bits of speech like from kind of a lot of sources, kind of just weaving them together like into a song. I mean, it is an all-time classic. It's a song which defines the 80s, and for me, I could not give it any less than a 10. So as I said, yeah, this is like the original 12-inch single for it here. So you've got, I think there's 2 mixes of This Charming Man like on here, because they've recorded it a couple of times, I think. So there's 2 different mixes of it, and then you've got Accept Yourself and a track there, Wonderful Woman, which again are exclusive to this single here. And this reached number 25 upon its original release, although it would later become their biggest charting single, reaching number 8 with a 1992 reissue. Under the iron bridge we kissed. Okay, we're back now to my copy of the album, and we now get Still Ill, which is for me a track which I think, and I can feel like a lot of Smiths fans do think should have been a single. You know, it is single worthy, and it is, it is one of like their kind of, I would say, like one of like their classic songs. Really, it has some of Morrissey's most iconic and like most memorable lines in it, like England is mine and it owes me a living. And another of my favourites is if you must go to work tomorrow, well, if I were you, I wouldn't bother, for there are brighter sides to life, and I should know because I've seen them, but not very often. Essentially just about kind of yearning for a kind of more kind of carefree age and a carefree life without having like kind of like any like sort of like worries and that. And then that kind of whole bit about under the iron bridge we kissed, and although I ended up with sore lips. There's just a lot of very quotable lines like in it, and it's just a really it's just a really great song. I must confess that when I was getting into the Smiths quite a few years back, it wasn't one of my favourites I got at the time. Then it was always a track which I guess I overlooked a little bit, but now I would certainly count it among my favourites off theirs. So yeah, for me would get another 10 out of 10. Next track on the album is Hand in Glove. Now this was their debut single. Unfortunately, I haven't got a copy of it. Like it is quite rare to get like that one. It was only pressed like as a 7-inch, but even then, it's still very hard to come by. But yeah, it's a great song. This lyrically, I guess, about the kind of shame and stigma like at like the time of kind of being in, I guess, like a homosexual relationship and kind of not kind of wanting that to be judged for it. Like he sings on it, like it's not like any other love. This one is different because it's us. And if the people stare, then the people stare. Oh, I really don't know, and I really don't care. I mean, it was originally like I said, like issued as a single prior to the album, way back in I think March of '83 is when it came out. So I guess its inclusion did seem like a little odd, like on this album, and like a bit like This Charming Man, like it's one they've tried to re-record and tried to get like sort of like a better take of it, like than like the original single. However, they never really topped it because like the version like on this album is actually just that single version, albeit remixed, like by like John Porter. Now, upon its original release, this wasn't a hit. It only got to number 124 on the UK singles chart. So yeah, like not a great placing for it there, but it's still a great track though, and I guess I can understand why they put it here because I guess it being a bit of a flop like up on like its single release, like I guess it could have gone down like as an ignored and kind of lost Smith single. So I guess it finding a home here like does make like a lot of sense. Like allows it to reach like a much wider audience. And I've also read as well that the like kind of starts off with like a harmonica part. I read that was a like in homage to like the Beatles like early singles, like their like Love Me Do starts off like with like a harmonica hook. So I think Johnny Marr was quite keen to kind of like pay homage, like a little like nod and a wink like to that there. So yeah, Hand in Glove, a great song, a great way to kick off like the Smiths story there. So yeah, for me would get a 10 out of 10.
So our different scars in
Next up is What Difference Does It Make? Now this is another classic track. You've got a great kind of meaty guitar riff on there. There's a lot of energy going on like on this track, and it is a great performance of it. Lyrically, it's maybe a bit lighter by Smith standards. It certainly doesn't have maybe quite as many quotable lines or sort of like as much depth to it as some of like their other work. And like Morrissey is like had like later described these lyrics as mildly embarrassing. But I've always rated the song. I've always thought it's a great track, like just a track like just like the combination of like vocal, like the guitar part, like the guitar riff on it. It's like very like iconic. And this would be issued as the primary single from the album, and it did very well. It reached number 12 like on like the charts, becoming one of their highest charting singles here. So yeah, What Difference Does It Make? A really great song, and for me, yeah, would get a 9 out of 10.
Did I really walk home?
And then the penultimate track is called I Don't Owe You Anything. And for me, this is one of the Smiths' most underrated songs. I just really love the feel like of this track. I think it's a combination like of like the chords like which Marr is using. They're quite soulful and kind of like just the kind of perfect like accompaniment to Morris's vocal. Just a very laid back sounding song, and I guess lyrically about a kind of like a liaison, a kind of hookup that I guess that you would kind of like later like regret and that. But no, a really, really good song, and like yeah, like for me, like always been one of my favourite Smith songs there. So yeah, that would get a 10 out of 10 from me.
Over the moor, take me to the moor.
And then the final track on the album, and possibly the most controversial, is Suffer Little Children. Now this is a very haunting song written from the point of view and like as a tribute to the children taken by the Moors murderers. Now of course like these events happened in the kind of like the 60s, like around the Manchester area, and like had a profound effect like on Morrissey, like who was like I guess like at the time off age like with these children, but also well aware like of like the events happening. So I guess it really hit him like emotionally, like what was like kind of like going on, and so like yeah, like it was a quite a deep like emotional song I think, like for him like to write. However, why I say it was the most controversial was because this was later pulled as the B-side to Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. Like it came out like on the album and no one really paid much attention to it, but when it came out like as a B-side, the kind of like the tabloid press like got like their hands on it and like sort of like said that it was done in bad taste, especially the guys like during like the song like the victims like actually names like in like the track. However, I guess Morrissey like I mean never intended to cause offence, and kind of like a couple of months later actually like sought the blessing like off like the mother like of one of the victims, and like I believe like he struck up like a bit of like a friendship like with her, like so I guess like I guess like at the time a lot of like the outrage was always kind of like sort of blown like out of proportion. But no, a nice song I think to end the album on. I mean it is quite a moving track. It's not one I would necessarily pull out to listen to, but like when it's on I always am very moved by like the track there. So for me, yeah, Suffer Little Children would get an 8 out of 10.
Whatever he has done, I have done.
Okay, so overall, this album would score 85%. So I think for me, this is an album very much of kind of two halves. I think you've got some classic songs like on here, but I do think it does lack cohesion like as a whole album. I think definitely the second side is much stronger when you factor in that you've got kind of strong album tracks like Still Ill and I Don't Owe You Anything, and then like kind of like the classic singles This Charming Man and Hand in Glove. But then there is some great album tracks like even on the first side, like Real Around the Fountain, like is a great opener, like the 1-2 puncher for that, and You've Got Everything Now just really work well to kind of like sort of kick off like the Smiths' career. But I would say though, I guess they would improve like as like they went on, you know, like they got better and better like at what like they did, and this is a like a strong first effort though. And I think as well why this album does perhaps get a bit of a bad rap, I think especially by kind of fans and that also like isn't considered a kind of classic Smiths album, is because like people prefer like the re-recordings like of the songs like for Hatful or Follow. So like around this time they were doing like a lot of BBC sessions, like whether it be John Peel or Kid Jensen's shows, and like yeah, like those kind of re-recordings are often like a lot of people consider them better than the versions like on the album. And I guess to some extent, especially like with talking I guess things like, I mean, maybe like What Difference Does It Make and Real Around the Fountain, or maybe a bit stronger like on like Hatful or Hollow, like, but like yeah, so that's maybe like why a lot of people do prefer like those other versions, and like kind of slightly like yeah, like sort of like aren't too keen like on this album, I think, just given its kind of rushed nature. But no, a great record to kick off Smith's career, and yeah, I will be interested to know what you think of it down below in the comments. And yes, I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.